Welcome to Full PreFrontal, the show that exposes the mysteries of executive function. This podcast is a collection of conversations about the role of the prefrontal cortex, which impacts your focus, planning, problem-solving, emotional balance, and independence. So join us as we explore executive function and the science of learning. And now, here's your host, the founder of EXQ, Sucheta Kamath.
Welcome back to Full PreFrontal, where we discover the hidden powers of the brain CEO that is the key component to self-directed success. Well-developed and mature frontal lobes produce strong executive function, which is how we direct our effort and build our success story. I am your host, Sucheta Kamath, and my hope is that through these meaningful conversations and through thought-provoking stories, we can all gain clarity and lead effective and productive lives. You can follow me on my social media at Sucheta Kamath or share this podcast with your friends and colleagues through whatever medium of your choice. So let's talk about today's conversation. It's all about college success and career transition. A 2014 report showed that almost 1/3 of our first-time college students choose a major and then change it at least once within 3 years. And the students who start in mathematics or natural sciences are more likely to switch to other fields. And I have some thoughts about that. I wonder if the parental pressure, because of these are more revered choices, may be the reason that they get into math and science. And close to 6% of college students take longer than 4 years to graduate. And that's really, really important to know why that is so. And then so around 4 million or 18% of the college students that graduate each year, there is something to think about. What are the skill set that go into arriving at college and then succeeding in college and then getting outbound, thinking this vision of a successful gainfully employed individual. And that's why I'm so excited to have today's guest, Lynn Miner-Rosen. She is the founder of LMR Coaching and the creator of the ADHD Job Squad, woot woot, because she just launched it, where she provides coaching, instruction, and support to college students and adults with and without ADHD, or sometimes referred to ADD, executive function deficits, and learning differences worldwide. She is a leading expert on ADHD career coaching and is an ICF credentialed and board certified career development coach. That combination, I gather from her, is a unique one in that space. So congratulations for that. And lastly, but not the least, before working as a whole life coach, Lynn taught special ed for 12 years in New York public schools. And that must be an experience in itself. So welcome, Lynn. How are you today?
Fine, Sucheta. This is such a pleasure to be with you and be on this podcast with you. I'm very honored to be asked to be on the podcast because I love your podcast. So good.
Oh, thank you for being here. And I asked my guest this question, since we will be talking about college and career readiness, and we talk about executive function and this space of ADHD. I wonder if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself, what kind of learner and thinker you were as a child, and did you struggle with ADHD? And what was your transition like from college to career? Or were you one of those anomalies who took longer than 4 years, or maybe even less than 4 years?
So how much time do you have? No, I'm kidding. So when I actually, just to start off, was not diagnosed until my 50s with ADHD. But as I look back, it was so clear that that's what I was struggling with. But back then, nobody knew what that was. I was just a very busy person, very active. At 7 years old, I was dancing, doing gymnastics. I wanted to take classes every single day. But I also had the opportunity to have a role model. My mother worked. And back then, all my friends' parents stayed home and baked cookies and took care of the house. And, it was very different, but I feel very blessed that I had that role model of somebody who grew up and who was working, and she had a very, very strong work ethic. And one thing I remember about myself is I couldn't sit still, for sure, typical ADHD stuff, but nobody knew what that was. Um, I remember also really struggling with impulse control. And I was constantly interrupting, but I was also at the same time the first one done with mathematics or my multiplication tables or my reading assignments. And they tested me as gifted, but I didn't know what that meant. Nobody knew what that meant back then. So I would be done and they would say, Lynn, you just have to sit there and wait. So I'd be sitting and waiting and wait. And of course, I'd be disrupting the class and blurting out and talking to my friends and trying. So, that I remember too. But I also remember just being very, just had to stay active. And I think that really helped me. The dance classes, gymnastics, whatever it was, that was me, uh, that helped for sure. In terms of college, and I always worked. I think that's from also back from my mom, and I use that experience to really to do what I'm doing now. Because even as a very, very young girl, I was entrepreneurial. I had a business card when I was 7 years old,
Oh no, that's so cool.
and it said babysitter, dog walker, car washer.
Oh my goodness, that's so
So
cool.
I had instilled in me from my parents that you have to earn what you want. And also I had to find out, what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to help others. I did a lot of volunteering. I did a lot of working. I would do part-time. I would do, anything I could do. I did it. So when I went to college, I was very shocked at how hard college was and had a very difficult time the first 2 years. And I did switch majors. I was a theater major because I was a dancer, and I was going to be a public speaking major, and then I was going to do drama again. And then I had to leave school for a year because I didn't do well. I was partying and being way too, social, and didn't spend the time really focusing on my studies. My parents were very happy I was in school, and there was very little pressure from them, which I really admire them for that. And I always tell my mother now, who is 85 and still owns her own business and is still working full time.
Oh my God, that's great.
So I still tell her, I go, Mom, you did that right. Thank you for doing that. So I did a lot of other things. Like during college, I was a tutor. I tutored. So I see how my ADHD, I jump around a lot. So you'll have to bring me back to where you want.
Yes, I
But
do want to bring you back to talking about your career, but sounds like one
yeah,
thing that's striking me as you're speaking, which is so common we see with people with ADHD, is great enthusiasm.
yeah.
And once your heart is set on something, there's a great intentional focus there, intentional effort there. And this entrepreneurship, which is, again, having a lot of creative ideas and kind of investing that in them if they make sense. So I'm hearing that in your voice. So let's
Yeah.
start talking about how sounds like you bring two fourfold knowledge to your work. One is your own experience, even though you probably never knew that was ADHD, but second is your own experience as a special ed a teacher. So first, tell our audience, what does it mean to be a coach, ADHD coach?
Oh,
And you and I are approach ADHD in two distinct ways, even though our mission is the same. So help our listeners understand, what does that mean?
yeah. And I just want to verify, I started in the business world. So that's where I was going. I didn't go into education until 25 years ago.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes,
so so maybe you can even bridge that gap a little
yeah.
bit. What was your what kind of parts of business that put you off to say I need to do something different?
Well, I had my two kids. I
Oh,
was a career person in the business world. I stayed home. And my youngest, who's 24, was born. My oldest has a little bit of ADHD, but he was fine. He got through school okay. My youngest was born blue, APGAR 0. He was not breathing. He was intubated,
Yes.
resuscitated. Uh, in ICU. He was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, which they did not know how bad it was going to be, as we know about cerebral palsy. He luckily had mild cerebral palsy, but still needed speech therapy 5 days a week, occupational therapy 4 days a week, and physical therapy 3 days a week for the first 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And until I was able to get him into a program, they would come to the house.
Yes.
So I learned a lot about what does a speech pathologist do? What does, so that was very interesting. And they loved what they did. They had so much passion and they loved working with him. And he was, he loved them and he got so much out of the therapist. Then I decided that, okay, I need to, there, complicated story, but I needed to go back to school and have a career where I can support myself because I did have to go through a divorce. And I needed to have a job where I could support my kids and have medical insurance for them. So somebody said, you could be a teacher. And I was like, I could? I was in my low 40s and I went back to school in my 40s and went part-time. I went to school, I worked part-time, and I raised my two kids, and I got 2 master's degrees in elementary education, middle school, and special education. So that was my
Amazing.
shift.
Yes, and I think that's going to really set us up because I think you're talking about that's how our executive function skills help us, right? To adjust, adapt, and repurpose our direction based on life circumstances. And
And
those who adapt
motivation.
and motivation, but some are able to do that successfully and some are not. So let's jump into this idea that what do you consider as a most well prepared college student, and what kind of qualities that student possesses? What special skills they possess that will set them up for success?
I don't know if there's any one specific skill that
No,
they
set of
need,
skills. So
set
maybe
of
set of skills.
skills.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing, and I don't know if they're going to learn it before they go to college or during college or after, and that is really the predicament here, is these transferable skills, soft skills, how to get along with others, how to have a conversation, how to work in a team, how to talk about yourself, how to shake hands and introduce yourself. And but on top of that, our clients, our students have so many other issues that get in the way of those things that seem really natural for a lot of people. And some people it's really natural, and some people it's not.
I like that. I think this is something my experience as well, that soft skills is probably the worst terminology to describe very potent skills. But these are skills also imply that they're softer than some hard skills, which are really more important. And second thing is they're in the background, which none of that is true. So I understand the limitation of the phrasing, but you point out this important distinction, which is capacity to socialize and cooperate and collaborate in order to achieve success, and including people in your success. So that seems to be a very important part.
Yeah, it does. And I think that, in terms of, are you going to college because you want it to be a social place or because your parents told you to go or because you want a certain career? I think that has a lot to do with what you bring is what you want out of it. I always say college is the job before the job. And at 18 years old, Sucheta, I don't know how we are asking young brains to make a decision about their major, about their future, about their college. And I don't know how we do that, but we do. And we
I
pursue
often
ahead.
I often fondly tell the story of my husband and I. In India, the structure, one of the most fascinating things about America, I feel, is you're allowed, in quotes, to change your career. So when I came to do my second master's in US, in my class, there was a 40-year-old man who was a lawyer, a practicing lawyer. And I first time when I met, I went and talked to him and said, "Is your mom okay with this?" Because the way it was drilled in us that my husband and I, we entered college around 17 and a half, and that was finalistic. He went into medicine. He had a choice, but he had to make that decision without ever knowing anything about the career, and me never knowing any career, what that career to live that life means. And so I'm glad that there's some elbow room. So let's talk about this career process. What when you work with clients, how do you get them career ready? What kind of advice do you give them? How do you assess what their inclinations and passions are? Because that sounds to be a very important part of your work.
Well, yes. I mean, if we've been learning so much about careers and ADHD and executive function, and one of the biggest things, as we know, is motivation. And if somebody isn't motivated to work, they're going to be unhappy at their job. And we have to really take that into account. And times have changed. Back in the day with our parents, they used to have the same job for 50
Yes.
years and they would get the pen and the certificate, and that would be wonderful. But it's not like that now. And it's a very confusing process because parents who want to do the best for their kids want them to succeed when they graduate, want them to earn money, want them to be successful, want them to pick a job that they're going to be able to support themselves. We all want that from our kids. But the thing is that they have to be motivated. And then the other issue I see about college is that we are spending so much time visiting colleges, finding out the best college, talking to advisors, talking to administrators, filling out applications. I'm sure you've gone through this yourself, and it's a year, right? It's a year process, if not more.
And tell me if this is how you what your sentiment is. But I always say when I give advice to my college parents and college students that there's no perfect college, there's a perfect fit, because the
Right.
fit is more important than the college. And a lot of times people are really enamored by name and location and the tier one, tier two based on sports or whatever. But that has nothing to do with the students' capabilities and motivation and inclinations. So, what is that career
Exactly.
discovery process? You think, can you walk us through the steps of that, helping students discover it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really something where I frame it as, let's figure out what your interests are. Who are you? What do you like to do? There's so much pressure from parents and mixed messages. Parents want you to do really well in college. They want you to pass the classes because they're paying a lot of money. They want you to finish in
Hmm.
4 years. That's so the pressure is go, go, go. They want you to join clubs and have a social life and get experience and exercise, and the anxiety is endless. And so, what I've seen is that students are, or they're going to the career office, and the career office says, where's your resume? Come back to me when you're a junior and you have a resume and you know what you want to do. And we've missed 2 year very important parts of life for the college students, and that is learning about themselves.
I
What
love that.
classes do they like? What work they have to work? They have to volunteer, work, do something. I say at a very young age. In fact, there's research about chores that kids that have done chores growing up are better employees.
Yeah, which is
So,
so cool.
I love to talk about that, but I think that there's so much pressure and anxiety that my clients say to me, I can't, with my ADHD and executive functioning, and we know about this time blindness, I can't think about the future because it stresses me out so much. So I'm not going to think about it because I got to focus on my grades. I got to focus on my clubs. I got to focus on my friends. I got to focus on my parents. I don't have time. I don't have time, and it's too much anxiety. So that's what I start to do is let's take some time. Oh, I actually try to help them manage their time, of course, so that they have the time to do this work. And let's say, you know, we spend so much time figuring out what college they're going to. We don't spend that much time helping them choose a career they might have for 50 years.
So
Like, it
what
takes time. We have to start when they get, like, right away.
And I love that. I think one very important thing that you're mentioning is this the choice that you make in college, because like you said, college is a job before the job. Then in the job, you're doing something called OJT, on the job training, and the
Yes.
class that you take or classes you take is you're saying, train me in this particular job skill. So that to me is such a great insight into the students' preferences, their inclinations. But the second part that I often talk, tell me if you do the same, is the barriers in succeeding in spite of making those choices. And a lot of times students are a little bit aversive to those conversations because they are either feeling shameful or they are feeling incredibly anxious for not having done well, but they never like to. So one of the exercises I do is analyzing each subject, and like the professor you had, what is the professor's rating, what are the other students saying about that professor, does your opinion of that professor match? And the idea there again is, if you are searching for experiences that shape your interest, then those are very like, it's a curation process. You're curating your experiences,
Yes.
right? So tell me
Right.
about that. What's your view on that? How are you guiding them to
My
take next classes?
Yeah, my view is they don't have any guidance. They
Yeah,
don't
they don't.
have a roadmap. They don't know what the first step is. They think when you say work, they think resume, and a panic sets in because they have a lot of shame about what they haven't done or what they don't know or what their parents expect out of them. And if I've had clients where both parents were doctors and their son, incredibly bright, super kid, went to Duke, graduated from Duke, did not want to go into medicine. Mom and dad were incredibly disappointed with him and very, very upset that he did not want to go into medicine. And so much so that he pushed back. They pushed him so much, push, push, push. He said, you know what? I'm going to be a professional poker player because I can make more money doing that.
And did he succeed in that?
Sort of.
Was
That's
he
a long,
skilled?
yeah. Yes, he was very skilled in poker, but it's not a good life. That's
Yes.
not.
It's funny you say that. I had an interview, my initial assessment, an interview with a 18-year-old who was about to graduate from high school with absolutely no organization, big picture thinking, no connection with the future self. And then in my interview, I said, "What's your goal? Where do you see yourself in after you finish college?" Because the parents were saying you're going to college. What's your goal? And he says, "My goal is to make $1 million, $1 million." And I said, "Well, that's a result. That's not a goal. You get $1 million because." What is that because you did what? He says, "No, no, no. I am going to get $1 million." And so all he had, no roadmap, as you said, no conceptualization except an outcome which he thought is a goal. So a lot of times I feel that career choices people make or students are making based on the salary promise, and it not necessarily linked back to their interest or inclination, right?
They're also, I've also seen, yes, you're right. I've also seen when I ask them what job they want, they say, oh, I want to be a private investigator. And I say, oh, that's interesting. Why do you want to do that? Oh, I saw it on TV on Netflix. It was so cool. So they don't know where to find out about careers. And I'll tell you one other story about a mom I met about 5 years ago here in Florida. She said, I am so proud of my son. He is going to law school in Miami. I'm so excited. I'm like, that's great. Congratulations. I said, does he want to be a lawyer? Well, yeah, I think so. And I said, well, does he know anybody who's a lawyer? No. Is anybody in your family a lawyer? No. Has he ever been to a lawyer's office? No. Well, how does he know he wants to be a lawyer? Well, he's really good at arguing.
Wow, that's such a great
Or
story.
it
Great
was
story.
like, so true. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that I think is a big issue also, and that's another reason why I do what I do, is that where do they go? How do they find out about these things? How do they explore? And I really think this is something that's been going on for a long time. We just haven't really clearly addressed it. I'm a big fan of Temple Grandin.
I
Um,
love her.
and I met her in person about 3 years ago and I got her to sign my books. And I told her what I was doing. And she stopped me and said, please tell parents this. And I really, I looked at what she was doing. And even 20 years ago, she was saying, we have supported these, whether it's executive functioning, neurodiverse, ASD, we've done so much work to support these children through school and into college and through college. But then what?
And I think the data I was reading about, like what high school degree meant 40 years ago is what college degree means now. So that college degree does not guarantee anything in terms of income.
Yep,
And as you said, a lot of students, and particularly Jonathan Haidt and all the research that is coming from social psychology and anthropology, even, that there is incredible anxiety, and the children are post-millennial generations are growing up with incredible lack of self-assuredness that I will be okay. So because of that change, psychological makeup, change in that makeup, there's incredible propping up by parents. And now we can't tell it's the parent dependence or parents fear, but children are not coming independently to explore a college experience.
correct. And I think that needs to start earlier on. I think
Yes.
it needs to start in middle school and high school. We need to have those conversations with our kids and share and let them go to work with mom and let them go to work with dad. And that's one of the things I start to do at that age, is to open them up, tell them, I want you to expand your choices of careers. Don't narrow down yet. Don't narrow down. Eh, Think of all the opportunities. And that's when even as a freshman, my biggest advice I can give to everybody out there is go to the career fairs as a freshman. Don't listen to people telling you can't get an internship as a freshman. You can. And the career fair is the place where you can ask questions of people that are there just to talk to you.
You know what? I think you just hit up the next point I was going to ask you about. To me, three important experiences, since we are shaping experiences. College is shaping experiences, and it's expanding the mental templates for executive function to be situated in a way. How do I problem solve if you don't have a large deck of experiences where you say, I solved the problem this way in this situation, and that way in that situation? Three things stand out for me. One is volunteering, second is internship, and third is a job, even if it's menial job. So in order to get ready for a job, you need to have held a job. And this sounds ironic, but even working at McDonald's can be incredibly valuable because it requires all the soft skills you were talking about earlier, and it requires managing your own emotions when the expectations of a low income job, but it's intensely requiring you to be effortful, and that can be valuable, right?
Yes. And the other one to that sucheta that's super important is learning about yourself. Learning
Yes.
about yourself. What did you like? What didn't you like? Because if you're not motivated, if you don't love what you're doing and it doesn't match your interests, your passions, your values, you're not going to stick to it. We know that with ADHD. We need that motivation. We need to have that something that lights us up. And we have to learn about what we like and what we don't like. But here's the other thing that comes into play with that information is when you start to interview, you want to tell a story to the
Yes.
people that you're interviewing with about yourself. And so if you don't have those stories or you haven't written them down or even thought about them, then it's hard to bring them up when we're anxious. As we know with executive function, we go from here to there and we forget everything that we're good at and we go to an interview. So by really focusing and thinking about what we've done, what we haven't done, and really keeping track of it through college. And I also talk about organization, keeping a binder, keep organizer in college, keep all your information in one place so you can grab it when you need it. So
I
there's a
love that.
lot that goes on in college.
It really does. And I am, I'll share with you one of my stories of, with my children. Um, when my son was writing, he had to do a project for high school or school years about hearing loss. And he went to a book and, like looked up something, read something. The book that he was reading about was talking about somebody who was deaf. And I mean, I'm a hardcore speech pathologist. So I said, my very dear friend is an audiologist. You need to interview her. And my son was like, no, mom, that's too much effort. There's no need. Nobody's asking me. I said, no, nobody's asking. Your mom is asking you. And I said, my very close friend, he knows her. And I said, just call her and ask her about her profession, what she does every day. Don't ask her about deaf people. Don't ask her about deafness, but what does she do? And of course, I immediately called her and told her that might happen. He might reach out to you. And he did. And they spent 45 minutes. Like your lawyer story, I think if my son had never met, heard, thought about, or interacted with an audiologist, that career would never be even a possibility. Now, I don't think that my intention was him to get into audiology, but I think that is such a missed out opportunity that so many of our friends are doing so many things, and we introduce our kids and have them. And so anyway, so by the time my second one came along and getting ready for college, he would go and have coffee with friends of ours of different careers. And he even went and saw a friend of mine who's a psychologist. And it was so wonderful. And it's what, to your point, I think the most important thing that he got from all that was telling his personal story, because they all wanted to know about him. And you never tell that to your teachers or your parents. It only comes up during interviews. But what if you have never interviewed before? So to your point, I really appreciate that.
And what you're talking about is so important is, I do this in my practice, informational interviews. I even give my clients, like, here are the 6 questions you should ask. I help them through it, the step by step, because they don't know what to ask or who to ask or how to do that. Or even job shadowing. Can I go to your office and spend half a day with you? I'll never forget, Sucheta, my mother and father were both in the fashion industry in Los Angeles. And my mother worked her way up to the president of a dress manufacturing firm, but behind her office was the factory. And I would go there a lot to work with her, and she would march me all through the factory. If you watch Mrs. Maisel, like
Yes,
that
I
movie.
love
Yeah,
that show.
okay. So that is exactly how I was brought up. I was in a factory. I was with my mom and walking around and sitting at a desk and patterns and
I
I'm
love
so
that.
blessed to have those experiences of actually being in it. And that's what I try to tell young people all the time, and parents, really open your kids up, tell them they can do whatever they want to do, give them the confidence that they can do whatever they want to do. Don't pigeonhole them into, well, you have ADHD, you have to do this, this, and this. You can't do it. I hear this all the time. Oh, I don't want a desk job. Well, we all have a desk job. How could you not? I get it. You don't want to be in a cubicle. So they took away the cubicles in all the companies, and then they found it was too disruptive. So now they're putting the cubicles back. We have to be flexible human beings, but we also have to learn what Temple Grandin says about ASD, that I love, is until young people experience it, they don't know what it's like. She said, even watering the plants and connecting a hose, if you haven't done it, you don't know what it's going to be like. And we need, at a young age, need to get kids to experience different things.
And uh, just a little sidebar for those who may not know who Temple Grandin is. She is a very well-known, amazing celebrity, but also an inspirational person in the field of autism. She herself has autism disorder, and what she has managed to do and become this role model is incredible. And I remember in her book, she writes that in 50s, if you were walking down the aisle in grocery store and if you knocked cans accidentally, you would have at least 5 strangers reporting back to your parents that you're misbehaving. And so that cultural regulation, that incredible sense of community where you were observed and given feedback and that allowed you to grow is kind of missing nowadays.
Yes.
One thought came to my mind as you were speaking, from where did we, all my siblings and I, my husband and his siblings as well, growing up in India, we have very strong um, cultivated observational capacity. So my father worked as a chemical, he worked for a chemical company in India, and he was a materials manager. So he would be on the phone and he would be trading benzene, hydrochloric acid. And so we remember when we were little kids, like we'll be screaming, pretending to be screaming benzene, benzene. But anyway, so what he would do is, even when we were little, like barely 10 years old, he would take us to work once every 6 months. And we had literally no entertainment. We would sit on the sofa while he would be making calls. He would be negotiating. Different people would come. He would hold meetings while we were still sitting. We were expected to greet everybody. We were expected to introduce ourselves. And we were expected to tell a story about ourselves. What grade? So nobody had to prod for more answers. Like, what's your name? Sucheta. What school? Blah, blah, blah. No, you just tell like a faucet. You tell them a story about you.
Mhm.
And I remember on the way back, as you would drive back in a bus, my father would just then give us feedback, how it went. And so even at 16 and 17, I remember going to his office. Nothing to do with nothing. I never went into that field, but I saw the art of negotiation. I saw the way my father controlled temper when people were not responding well. I love the way he would tease. I love the way he would tell stories. So to me, my children have come to my practice. They have actually, I've used them as peers for my ADHD and ASD clients. We have taken people to movies. My children have gone as peers to give feedback about the movie. If somebody's talking too much, they're like, I think we should watch the movie quietly. So they have been raised with this idea of how to participate. So that's what I think you're talking about, that we shouldn't be in compartments, a job and then college and then life. It should be all merging with each other.
And even more so for people with executive functioning challenges, because there's so much that gets in the way: emotion, fear, memory, self-confidence. There's so much that gets in the way that we need to start even earlier by building those things. Yes.
So yeah, so tell me a little bit about your. I have two more questions before we get to the end. One is the job searching process, and second is the career switching process, which sounds like you must be dealing a lot with. So one, not knowing what to do, then getting there, then not liking what you do, then saying, do I have other options? So how do you see that transition?
Yeah, I see that there are people in different stages of their life. And I'm sure your audience is thinking, yep, I don't know what I want to do, or I do know what I want to do, or I'm not sure how to find out more information, or I hate what I'm doing. How do I know what I'm best at? What am I good at? What are my interests? What are my, I think that's missing. I think that whole piece that we don't spend enough time on that is really learning about ourselves. And so that's where I start. No matter what stage you're in, you need to know about yourself very well. Now, the job search is really about, there's strategies, but I think the biggest advice I can give, or the biggest, impact I can make, is you need to do, people say this is a bad word, research. And
No,
our
it's not a bad
kids
word.
with
Great
kids
word.
with ADHD won't do research. We could call it whatever you want to call it, homework, investigations, experience, whatever it is. We need to take the time to really think about who we are and what we are interested in, what we want to do. I mean, think about how much time we spend planning a vacation. We want to know what the place looks like, what kind of flights, so much time. We don't spend that much time researching jobs or careers. Many people with ADHD, I don't want to, or executive functioning, tend to take the first job they get. That's like, oh, I got offered a job, I'm going to take it. And we also have to talk about that. That might not be the right job for you. And let's, really focus on that, but also learn about the company before you interview. We have to align our values. You and I talked about, I'm going to bring it up, the LGBTQ community. If I have a client like that, and I said to my client, we have to know what your values are. What if you go into a career that isn't welcoming who you are?
I really
That's
think that's so
important.
powerful. No, I think, tell me a little bit more, because I feel, how do you get them to discover their values so that they can align
Oh,
them? Because that goes back to that self-discovery process you're talking about. But just indulge me for a second. What I do is I have my clients look at the mission of the company, and then take the mission of their most favorite company. If all went well, they would love to work. And then we do our work our way backwards from that. So if this is the mission of the company, what should be the mission of the person who works at this company?
yeah, I love that. And I would love it if our clients would get to that point. I don't even know if they're getting there without support.
They
And
won't.
that's what
They
I'm
won't.
really worried about.
Yes.
Um,
It's non-intuitive process.
but in terms of knowing about themselves, so as a credentialed career coach, luckily, I'm also strong interest inventory, credentialed and certified. So I give the strong interest inventory assessment. I work, but I do all the assessments, personality. I have a values assessment. We do all kinds of, I even do skills, hard skills, soft skills, checklists. You know, but the thing to remember about these assessments that's really tricky is that they're created by people who are neurotypical for people who are neurotypical. And, that's a whole nother conversation, Sucheta, because a lot of jobs are doing the MBTI as an entry level assessment. And it's really not a clear defined result for people with executive functioning challenges or ADHD that are not neurotypical. And I worry about those. So the assessments that I give come with a conversation, and I explain what the assessments are. I don't just hand them a piece of paper and say, this is who you are. We talk about, and I'll ask them, does this resonate for you? Is this something you can relate to? Is there something that you can connect to? Does this make sense that the result of this assessment says that? Yeah. And so we talk about each one. We spend the time.
So just a quick question, the strong inventory you were talking about, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah. So the strong interest inventory is created. It's really about the Holland Code, and it's the same thing. You talk about RACIC, realistic, the interest codes, and you see that a lot in a lot of online job boards. They talk about your interest code or your theme. And so that's really the strong interest inventory, is comparing your interests to other people that have the same interests, and
What
then
they
it
have
tells
done?
you what they do.
Oh, I love that. And quickly, about the hard skill and soft skill checklist, is this something you have developed, or that's also common practice in coaching?
It is a common practice. I believe it's common practice with coaching, with career development professionals, whether they're in middle school or college or independent like me. if you go to a career professional, most likely they're going to do a set of questionnaires or assessments to
Hmm.
help you learn about yourself, because often I give them a checklist on skills and they don't realize, oh, I didn't know I had that skill. And here's the other thing, Sucheta, then they learn what the skill is called. So they can
Yes,
talk about it and say, oh, I didn't know it was called that, and I do have that skill. Or
I
I
love
didn't know it
that.
was even important, that
Yes, I
skill.
love that. So as we end, tell me, this is probably one of the articles that you wrote, one of your blogs, which I loved. Um, this generation of young ones coming up the ladder, trying to establish themselves as independent, self-sufficient, earning professionals, they have to come to terms with the role of social media in their life. And
Mm.
what are your views? I see a lot of impulsivity and poor judgment, or not particularly using any filter to decide who I am in the space, in the virtual space. So being very cavalier in their attitude, and you know, I have a client. I'll give you a quick story that who God help us all, but used an ID that is not very flattering, and and unfortunately there's no way to wash it off the internet. And so that ID, which was now 7 years old, still comes up with his name. And he's matured and he has a great job, but that was a bad decision made, and that's still sticking. So do you have any thoughts about social media and career, presenting yourself as a
Yes.
responsible adult?
Yes. I started teaching not only special education, but I also taught computers and business in middle school.
I
I had
see.
two certificates. I had three certificates, but
You are amazing,
because of
Lynn.
my background in business. And that's when the internet was starting to really become big and people were posting and using their cell phones, young kids. And I would say to them, do you that nothing everything you put on the internet is there forever. And people can screenshot and share it everywhere. And I would draw it on the board, a big circle, and then this one and that one and that one and that one, and showing them the potential connections of people that can see their post. Then I started doing talks to educators and schools and young people about clean up your digital dirt, clean it up, and be careful what you say, because colleges are looking, employers are looking, fellow workers are looking, everybody is looking. And if your grandma can't see what you put on the internet, then it shouldn't be on there. And also to really be careful how you comment. The impulsive comments, people have to learn, take a breath, sleep on it, and maybe tomorrow write it, because comments count too. Twitter, if you put we see this all the time with the president and with other politicians, that their Twitters are up on the big screen TV right there. There you go. That's what you tweeted 5 years ago. It's right
And you can
there.
take it down, but somebody took a screenshot of it, like you
That's right.
said. So it's
So
there.
yes, that's it's a hard lesson to learn. But I also think, again, that goes back to how we teach kids in middle school and high school, how we teach them about their future, about careers, about the impact of what they're doing then can affect them later on. The
And I
things
love
they're
that.
learning, or the experiences they're having, or the things that people say to them. If a teacher says to them, what are you going to do? Grow up and, do this? There's so much shame, and we need to build them up and not, break them down.
Well, Lynn, I cannot thank you enough for being in this space and contributing to the evolution of young adults to become really self-assured individuals, because they need the kind of support, like you said. This is not intuitive, and this is not deliberately taught to them. So I'm so glad that you're in this space and guiding and leading. So thank you. So before we end, I ask my guests to recommend a couple of books. Do you have some books that you recommend to our audience?
Yeah, so one of the current books that are out that, and I met Dr. Rostein at our last CHAD conference, and here the book is called The Stressed Years of Their Lives.
Wow.
Helping your kids survive and thrive during their college years. And I suggest to every parent at least read the first 5 chapters, download it, listen to it on audio. He talks a lot about coaching, but he also talks about anxiety and how it's affecting college students of,
Love it.
of all different kinds. And then the other one I love. This is for coaches or professionals, anybody that's a professional, is Finding a Career That Works for You by Wilma
Feldman.
Feldman.
That's
And
great.
Wilma is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. And, this is a step-by-step with a lot of worksheets in it that you can checklist, that you can do about values and interests. They're all in there. So you could do your own.
That's fantastic. Lynn, and one question as we end, wanted to ask was about Job Squad. What is that all about? And tell us a little bit more. This is your new venture and the creative businesswoman that you are. Tell us, how would this help people?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I've been doing one-on-one coaching and having a lot of success and loving and working with my clients. My one-on-one practice is full. And I said, when COVID hit, Sucheta, I said, oh, this is the time. And I've had this in my mind for a long time working on this, but I said, I've got to do it now because there's so many people that need support, direction, encouragement without judgment, without stigma, without any barriers, and there's misinformation everywhere. So I created ADHD Job Squad. It's an online membership, virtual, it's courses, it's live guests. It teaches straightforward executive career development, job search strategies, and provides judgment-free support for adults, college students, anybody, whether you experience symptoms of ADHD, executive functioning, or learning differences, and everybody is welcome. So just go to adhdjobsquad.com.
And we will link these websites. She has a couple. So and the resources, particularly, you should also explore the blogs Lynn writes. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing such wealth of knowledge and kind of really encouraging people to take their journey into towards career readiness seriously. So folks, this is our amazing guest, Lynn Miner-Rosen. And if you loved what you hear, please share this podcast with everybody else and keep in touch. And please know that our frontal lobe continues to grow until the end of life. So let's take this seriously. Thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sucheta. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Full PreFrontal, exposing the mysteries of executive function. To contact your host, Sucheta Kamath, and learn more about her work on improving executive function, visit her website at exqinfiniteknowhow.com. That's www.exqinfiniteknowhow.com. Tune in next week for another informative episode of Full PreFrontal, hosted by the founder of EXQ, Sucheta Kamath.